Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Fertility New Zealand webinar. Thank you so much for joining us on this evening, and it's nice to be snuggled up at home and getting well educated about preconception health while in our nice slippers with a cup of tea, no doubt. So tonight's webinar is entitled The Top 6 Things You Can Do When Trying to Conceive. Jo Barnett is a medical herbalist and also a member of the Fertility New Zealand board, and she will talk us through some really great information to aid you with your overall wellness when trying to conceive, both naturally and with assisted reproductive technology. For those of you who haven't attended one of our webinars before, either during this COVID period or during Fertility Week or throughout the year, Fertility New Zealand is a registered charity, and we're dedicated to supporting, educating and representing all New Zealanders with fertility challenges. We do this in a whole bunch of ways, but the main way is through support, both support groups, virtual support, and online resources and support groups, as well as information and advocacy as well. So if you'd love to know more about us, we are a member organisation. It's free to join, so become a member. You'll get regular emails around things happening in your neck of the woods and other pieces of information that we can send your way. We have a support line and a support email address that's available around the clock to answer any queries, to point you in the right direction for better information or support. We're always there to help. So without any further chat from me, I will hand over to Jo. Now, as I should say, there is a chat function here, so if you'd like to send any questions through to Jo, please do type them in the chat box in the corner of your screen. We will hold back the questions until the end of the webinar, so don't be shocked if you don't see it popping up while Jo's speaking, but it's probably best if she can go through her presentation for 20 minutes or so, and then we've got plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. So I will hand over to Jo, and she will share her wealth of information with you.
So I'm here to have a wee chat about preconception care, really. We've said the top 6 things you can do when trying to conceive, and we've tried to break down a massive subject into a tiny little subject. So it will just be a wee bit of a brief overview, but hopefully just give you some ideas of things that you can do yourselves as a couple to help improve your chances of conceiving, whether you're trying naturally or through IVF, and also in helping to improve the chances of having a healthy child as well. So we've broken it down into a number of things: understanding your body, looking at mind-body health, what you're eating, reducing exposure to harmful chemicals, that sort of thing, looking at any drugs and that kind of stuff you might be using, and then also a wee bit of an overview of when is a good time to seek some help. And if we kind of call this a group of things, really, preconception care, and that's really making sure that you've got as much as possible an adequate supply of everything that's essential to the health of your eggs, your sperm, your fertility and your baby's development, and an absence of things, or as much as we can, that have been shown to be harmful. And this really isn't a new concept. It's been around for thousands of years. The ancient Spartans had childbearing aged women engaging in wrestling, running, quoit throwing, to help to build them up for good, strong, healthy pregnancies and babies. The ancient Romans noticed environmental factors on fertility when they found a drop in conception rates when they installed lead water pipes. And then the ancient Greeks recommended that women imbibe no alcohol before they were, when they were trying to conceive and during pregnancy. So it's not a new concept. And I think for a lot of people, it really does empower you and give you a sense of control over what can be a very difficult and uncontrollable feeling time. So we'll move on to the next slide, which... There we go. No, sorry, I just have to work out how to change slides. Juanita? Here we go. There we go. So the first thing we'll have a wee look at is understanding your body. And I think, you know, if you look at the stats in the bottom corner there, 85% of women in New Zealand can't identify or don't know how to identify their fertile window. And, you know, without knowing that, you really are stabbing in the dark a little. I think the first thing to be aware of is that sperm take 116 days to generate. And let's just kind of hark back to the preconception thing for a minute. During that time, they're very susceptible to damage from any illness, any toxins they're exposed to, pollutants, and any nutrient deficiencies. The egg, on the other hand, takes about 100 days for that final maturation, and this through to ovulation. And this is really when the egg is most vulnerable as well. So it's kind of in this lead up to conception, this kind of about a 4-month window. Everything that you do, you know, if you have a big binge night with alcohol or any drugs you might take, that kind of thing, have the ability to have an impact on the health of the egg or the sperm, and therefore, you know, potentially on the chances of conceiving and also on the health of any potential child. So it's a really important time where you can have quite a big impact. So the best time for intercourse is 1 to 2 days prior to ovulation. So it's really important, I guess, to then learn how to detect for you when you ovulate. We have had a timing of sex webinar recorded, I think that was about mid-April. So that's really worth going back to and having a wee listen to, because I'm only going to kind of skim over the surface here. The best way, I think, to work out when you are ovulating or to work out your patterns is to actually chart your cycle. And so this requires taking your temperature each morning. And temperature kind of mirrors what progesterone does. So it gives us an indication of when ovulation has occurred. So it's kind of almost like a confirmation of your ovulation. So it's not particularly useful for trying to actually conceive, but it is useful just to confirm that that fertile window is over for that month. And the most important thing is looking at your mucus. And the mucus changes in that lead up to ovulation, like just after your period, when your estrogen levels are low, you will find that your mucus is quite scant, it's quite dry and tacky. And then as your estrogen levels rise, as you approach ovulation, the mucus becomes increasing in volume and quality, like it's more wet or flowy. Sometimes it's like raw egg white, and usually it becomes a lot clearer. And this wet, fluidy mucus is the fertile mucus. And if you look at your mucus, like you swipe at the mouth of the vagina and sit there and analyze it and think, could anything swim through this? And when your mucus is fertile, if you were able to look at it under a microscope, you'd actually see lots of channels formed in the mucus, which help to get the sperm going in the right direction and help to protect it also from the acidic walls of the vagina. So it's pretty cool what our bodies can do. Whereas your mucus, just after your period, say, when it's all thick and lumpy, if you looked at it under the microscope, you could see there's no way that sperm is able to get through there. So you want to use that wet fertile mucus and keep an eye out for that. And you'll find that even with an slightly irregular cycle, you should probably have a similar pattern each month. So it's kind of you're writing that down, recording it, so you get a really clear picture of what's happening for you. So the egg is around for 12 to 24 hours, but the sperm can live for 3 to 5 days. Whoops, what's happening? So what we want to be able to do is see, you want the egg, the sperm there ready and waiting for when that egg is released. And your kind of body will guide you, I guess, as to what to do there by just monitoring your mucus. With men, on a month when you're trying to conceive, it's really important not to save sperm, which seems a little counterintuitive. But if you're trying to conceive on that cycle, men want to, in that phase before you're starting to try, before your fertile phase, men want to be having intercourse, like every day or two, every 2 or 3, or even every 2 or 3 days, just to keep the system rolling and getting rid of old sperm. And then you let the sperm count build up for 2 or 3 days before your conception attempts, and then have sex at least every second day, but as often as you really want to through that fertile time. And the thing there is that if sperm spends too long, either in the male or the female reproductive tracts, their DNA can start to fragment. And so that can affect the quality of the sperm, and should it result in a conception, there's just an increased risk of problems emerging from that. So we want really fresh sperm meeting really fresh eggs, and hopefully then having a really healthy pregnancy and a healthy child. Okay, so that's that one. So if we move over to the next slide, thanks, Juanita. Looking at our bodies and our minds, the first thing really is to look at your BMI. We don't want our BMI to be too low, particularly for females. So if you're underweight, it can affect your estrogen levels and also your ability to menstruate. So that's not particularly helpful from a conception point of view. And if you're overweight, that brings on a whole heap of other problems, particularly for women, but also for men, because with men, if they're overweight and they have a belly, when they're sitting down, that belly is hanging over the testes, which are meant to be kept cool, and can increase the testicular heat, which can then cause DNA damage and just heat damage to sperm. Now, just 1 minute, because there was something else I want to point out there. So ideally, we want our BMI to be around 20 to 25. That's kind of, our ideal situation. And for every BMI point that goes above 29, there's a 4% reduction in your chance of a woman becoming pregnant on that cycle. If your BMI is between 35 and 40, the chances of conceiving dramatically decrease. So we really want to work as best we can. Even small amounts of weight loss can make a dramatic impact on your ability to conceive. And for some people, BMI doesn't really allow for just different body types, and for also muscular, because some people are very muscly, and that can affect your BMI as well. So sometimes we'll just do the hip to waist ratio as well, just as another way to give an idea of how you're sitting there. So exercise is really important for everything, really, for stress relief, for healthier pregnancies, easier births, faster recoveries. It reduces the risk of postnatal depression, and just that overall sense of wellness, strength, fitness. It really, really does help. And I guess then you've got to get that balance of exercise, because you don't want to be doing, marathons, for example, at this point, because that's considered too much exercise. So what we suggest moderate exercise, and trying to include a little bit of aerobic, a little bit of strength work, and a little bit of some flexibility exercises. So you're really getting fit and strong. So with exercise, if you can try and do something that gets your heart rate up for at least 20 minutes, 3 to 4, 5 times a week would be awesome. And then just a little bit of strength work and some stretching or something on top of that. So exercise might be something like walking. And I guess here you need to be honest with yourself, because if you're just walking around the block on the flat and not getting your heart rate up, it is helpful, but it's not as helpful as if, say, you could walk up a hill or walk very, very briskly. So you are pushing yourself, because kind of on the flat, it's easy just to kind of cruise a wee bit. Jogging's fine, cycling, swimming, dancing, rowing, whatever takes your fancy, because we want it to be fun as well. want to enjoy exercise. We don't want to add another chore to the list of things that you're trying to achieve. And any strength work is great. Just just strengthening up that lower back area, the abdominal area, your buttocks, your pelvic floor, as well as your arms and legs. And then things like yoga, particularly hatha yoga, are great. So if you can, and there's a lot of online stuff now. If you've done a little bit of yoga before, then, just picking up a half hour, even an online class a few times a week is really helpful. So that's kind of the main things there. But I really want to stress that I really want you to enjoy it and get outside and just enjoy yourselves as much as you can. A couple of things with exercise though is swimming in indoor pools. I mean, once or twice a week probably is not so bad, but the chlorine in the pools and the other chemicals they use in there aren't so good for fertility. So you really want to be mindful of that, and particularly with indoor pools, because there's nowhere for the chlorine smells to disperse. So just being mindful of that. And the other thing to be mindful of is if you like playing golf. And I'm not saying don't play golf, but I'm just saying there's a lot of herbicides and pesticides used to keep the greens nice. So just be mindful that if you don't kind of bend down and touch the grass and then thoughtlessly put your fingers in your mouth. But we're not all putting our fingers in our mouths anymore anyway. So that's another thing. And the other thing for men is cycling. It's probably not the best thing for people trying to conceive, particularly for men who do have known issues with their sperm, because if you're spending a lot of time sitting on a bike seat, the testicles are scrunched up, you're usually in your lycra bike shorts, so you're creating a lot of heat there. You can get seats, special seats with holes in them, which is kind of create a little less heat so the testicles can dangle a little bit more comfortably. And mountain biking, if you're not on your seat all the time, then that's possibly a bit better than spending hours and hours road cycling. And then stress. Now, I think everybody's had varying degrees of new and different stresses over the last wee while. I think the thing to be aware of is just try and think about the things or focus on the things that you can control versus the things you can't, because some things we just have no control about, as we're all discovering at the moment. So just really focus on things you can control, and this is what a lot of the things we're talking about tonight. There are things that you can manage, you can take control of yourselves and make quite a big difference. Excess stress does affect all aspects of fertility. It's a hard one to pinpoint. It's a hard thing to say, this is the issue. But we do know that for a lot of people, if they're stressed, it affects their gut function. So that's going to affect their absorption, their digestion and utilization of nutrients. It will affect your sleep a lot of the time. So, and we know how important sleep is just for general well-being. It could affect your ability to stick to your healthy eating guidelines and to your new exercise regimes. It can affect your hormone balance and production. It can affect your immune system and your immune response. And it can also even affect the ability of the sperm to penetrate the egg. So it's really, really important that you try and proactively manage your stress, prioritize your self-care, take time out for yourself and for yourselves. And really just do what you can to focus on that when you're trying to conceive, and seek help, when you need to. Talk to people. We've got a lot of support groups running through Fertility New Zealand as well, which a lot of people find really helpful, just to talk to other people in similar situations. Okay, that's a very quick flick over stress. And then I think we're moving on to eating well. Again, this is a big topic, and we've had a similar, I think we had another webinar in April as well, which you can go back and have a wee look at or listen to, which is talking about nutrition. But I think the main thing here is to just choose good sources of nutrition. Eat good food, healthy food. And imagine it's a bit like feeding a toddler, where you really want each mouthful to count. So we really put stress on choosing lean protein and good quality proteins, and that can be animal sources or vegetarian sources. Do make sure you are getting healthy fats in your diet. Stay away from your deep fried fatty stuff, but using good oils, avocado, nut butters, pestos, that kind of thing, to get you good fats, and lots of good quality fish. Try and stay away from tuna because that tends to be high mercury, but salmon, a lot of our white fish, sardines is really good, herring, mackerel, that kind of thing is fine. And I guess, I was a little horrified at the queues outside McDonald's and KFC when we entered in stage 3, because I was really hoping that people would be all at home cooking delicious, healthy meals full of vegetables. But maybe we just need to be a bit mindful of, if we do get takeaways of what we do choose. A really, really big thing is to try and avoid sugar and refined carbohydrates. And I think this is a difficult one because sugar is so addictive, but it can make such a big difference to your sense of well-being, to your quality of sleep, to your even helping with weight loss, and also just to your general nutrition, and also your immune function as well. And so choose whole grain carbs, brown basically over white, and try and stay away from processed, prepackaged foods, and always read labels. And if it's got words that you don't understand or you don't know what they are, then don't buy it. And try and be organized and plan your meals so that you know what you're going to be doing when you come home, what you've got to cook. Try and make enough for lunch the next day, and that will help also to avoid making those poor food choices when you're just starving and you just want to grab something really quickly. And I'm a bit of a big one on eating vegetables. Eat as many vegetables as you can. And my children, I can imagine, are rolling their eyes at me right at the moment. But, you can't eat enough vegetables just at dinner time. So you want to try and incorporate them at least into lunch as well, and even breakfast if you can, and that might be that you have an egg with some spinach, mushrooms, tomato, avocado, not necessarily all of them, although if you did, that would be great. But just trying to get a bit more creative about, how you can get more vegetables into you. So when you look at your plate at night, you want it to be at least half of it vegetables and colourful. So you've got a good mix of nutrients coming in there. Might some orange, some red from some beetroot, lots and lots of greens, that sort of peas, that kind of stuff is really good. Fruit, 2 or 3 pieces a day is sufficient. If you think of fruit as being like a vegetable with a wee bit of sugar added, so you don't want to have a heap of fruit, but 2 or 3 serves a day is fine. And lots of berries. Berries are great, so you can get some frozen berries and add them to your breakfast or your smoothies. That kind of thing is really good. And make sure you're drinking plenty of water. Sounds simple, but it's effective. And you can use herb teas here as well, or warm water, or you can add lemon juice or lime juice, or you can put your water through a soda stream without adding the sweetness. But really, really make sure that you are drinking water. And it's as it gets colder, that becomes a little more difficult. So just be mindful of that. And we will talk about coffee and alcohol in just a second. I think that's on the next slide. Whoop, no, okay, we're not talking about coffee and alcohol. We're going to look at environmental toxicity first. So one thing that is tricky is what you're exposed to, and whether it's exposed at home, in the workplace, just in the general environment. All these things, so free radicals, heavy metals, radiation, chemicals, they can all act as endocrine disruptors, which means they affect the glandular and hormonal health. They can also act as teratogens or mutagens, so acting to sort of cause problems at a more cellular level. So what you can do is assess your exposure at home, at work, and through your leisure activities to see where toxicity could be lurking and what you can do to then minimize them and protect yourselves. And it is tricky to bring right down to zero, But it's possible to bring your bottle to sort of total toxic load down to a level that doesn't pose a significant threat to your health or to the health of your child. And I think it's really important to note here that everybody's life has different challenges. And if we aim high, but don't panic if we can't sort everything, because some things are really out of our control. But definitely set your standards high, because if you don't, there's too much room for slack to move in. But really, everything that you achieve is a plus, because it's more than you were doing before. And so just pat yourself on the back really for all the stuff you managed to achieve, and try not to beat yourself up. If you slip up for a day or two, that's fine. So pesticides are probably one of the biggest endocrine disruptors, and they cause a lot of egg, sperm, and baby damage. So really try and avoid using pesticides, herbicides, that sort of thing around the home. And if you really hate weeding, try and sort out some sort of more natural, non-toxic, environmentally friendly alternatives. Heavy metals like lead and mercury, aluminium, that sort of thing, they're not used by the body. So we don't have any sort of metabolic pathways for their elimination. So any exposure can just accumulate in your body over your lifetime. So that's another thing with age. With age, I guess some of the issues we associate with aging sperm and eggs could also be just an accumulation of, from environmental toxicity, radiation exposure, that kind of thing as well. So just be mindful, lead paint, amalgam tooth fillings, large fish like tuna, shark, that kind of thing, they can accumulate a lot of mercury. Any industrial and agricultural exposures, cigarette smoking, passive cigarette smoking, aluminium cookware and foil, antiperspirants, that kind of thing. So all of these contain heavy metals, which could possibly be detrimental. And I guess, if you're in doubt, if you're not sure of what you're exposed to, we have a phrase, we say dust and fumes. So if it's got dust or fumes, try and avoid it as best you can. And the only products really you want to be using that you can, that you can smell are things like your white vinegar, maybe some tea tree oil or some citrus oil or something like that for cleaning products. And I guess that does bring me on to looking at what you are using in the home for cleaning. Try and use some basic stuff like elbow grease, or some of those cloths that you don't need, cleaners for, or basic things like white vinegar and baking soda will do most jobs, or using products like EcoStore products, that kind of thing, which, are easier on the environment and easier on us. And try and avoid sprays, because you're going to be inhaling a lot of stuff then as well. Personal care as well, looking at what you're using on your body, on your skin, deodorants, hair dyes, that kind of thing. Can you avoid dyeing your hair? Can you use non-aluminium deodorants? And maybe if you're somebody who sweats a lot and finds that you do smell quite a lot, just use the aluminium deodorant as needed rather than just routinely every day. And if you do use any antiperspirants, do just use roll-ons rather than sprays, because again, you're going to get the skin absorption as well as the oral absorption as well. And then radiation exposure is a biggie. A recent estimate concluded that the average person now is exposed in a month to the level of radiation our great-grandparents were exposed to in their entire lifetime. And there is increasing evidence that it can lead to damaged DNA, broken or misshapen chromosomes, mutated genes, and early cell death. And we know that, we're pretty sure it adversely affects sperm and embryo development, and possibly is linked into fertility problems and miscarriage. The thing with radiation, it is really hard to prove, and it's really hard to see, and because it's it's everywhere and we don't really think about it. The most toxic of radiations is ionizing radiation, which is the stuff that you get from X-rays and long-distance flights. Well, long-distance flights, sadly, are not such an issue at the moment, but X-rays, try and minimize X-ray use. So really, obviously, if you have to have an X-ray, you have to have an X-ray. But if you can, and you're trying to conceive, or in your preconception time, get them to make sure they cover your lower body, or the parts not being x-rayed around your ovaries, testicles, that area, whether they use a lead apron, so that will protect that part of you at least. So really just emergency use as best you can. The other one is your non-ionizing radiation, and this is the stuff with all our devices use. So basically, if something doesn't connect with a wire but it's still working, then it's using non-ionizing microwave technology. So our phones are probably our main things that we are using. The level of radiation is low, but it's constantly emitting or receiving when it's turned on. So accumulatively, particularly if you're carrying your phone around on your body, it can really add up. The other thing too is if you're spending a lot of time with your phone held up to your head, then that can affect your pituitary gland, which is your master endocrine gland, which sort of sends out your signals to your reproductive organs and your eggs and your sperm, and kind of governs all those pathways. So it's really important to try and, treat your phone like it's a bomb or something, and just treat it really carefully and with respect. As much as you can, keep it at least a metre away from yourself, and try and not carry it on your body. If you do carry it on your body, try and turn it off or put it onto flight mode as much as possible. And the other thing too is this when you start to use it, so when you go to first use it or to send a text, hold it away from yourself, because it's the initial use that causes the big spike in attracting radiation. So you could write your text on your phone and then hold it out at arm's length to push send. Just little things like that can make a difference and reduce the load of what you're exposed to. Use a speaker as much as you can. Use air-filled earpieces if you use earpieces. And then don't forget your cordless phones as well, which I don't think a lot of people have home phones anymore. But it's quite handy if you are going to be having a long phone call. Try and get a good old-fashioned corded telephone and use that, or use your portable phone or your cell phone on speaker. And the other thing I want to say is, please don't charge your phones in your bedroom. Charge them in another room. And that will help you not wanting to sneakily look at your phone in the night if you wake up, so you'll sleep better. And also it means at night, at least in your bedroom, you've got a reasonably clean, environment. If you have things like TVs, that kind of thing in your room, turn the TV off at the wall overnight. Hot electric blanket, same thing, turn them off. Use it to heat your bed up, but don't go to sleep with your electric blanket on. Turn that off at the wall as well. Computers as well can be a wee bit of an issue. The least invasive option for a computer is a desktop with a flat screen, but any wireless attachments that you might use, of course, will use radiation. So with laptops, it's the base, so the keyboard and the base of the laptop, it gets very hot. And I'm sure if you've sat with your laptop on your knee for a period of time, you will feel that heat coming through the bottom. That's not very good, particularly for eggs, but even more specifically for sperm. So if you're using your laptop, use it on a surface, not on your back, and your posture will benefit as well. Unless, of course, you've got a lead cushion or something you can put between yourself and the laptop. Because just remember, sperm don't like heat. They really don't like heat. So try and avoid frying your sperm, really. And last, very briefly, thing to look at with tech chemicals and things is plastics, which are well-known endocrine disruptors. So basically, anything that's hot, fatty, acidic, or wet, and try and avoid it contacting with plastics, that you're going to be eating. So, with your plastic water bottles, swap them out for glass or stainless steel. And because a lot of plastics that can claim to be BPA free are still not safe, because BPA has been replaced by BPP, BPE, BPF, HPP, and there's a whole heap of other analogues that do have the same sort of endocrine disrupting properties as well. Also be mindful of cling wrap, takeaway containers and other plastic containers, particularly softer plastics, and try not to expose them to extremes of temperature, and particularly don't use them to microwave in. In fact, try and avoid using your microwave full stop. Stainless steel, glass, ceramics, brown paper, that kind of thing is the way to go. All those wraps, the beeswax wraps are better alternatives. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Alcohol. There are no safe levels that we know of in either parent, preconceptually or in pregnancy. So alcohol really is best avoided in that preconception period, and obviously for the woman during pregnancy, and ideally breastfeeding as well. Fetal alcohol syndrome, or its less aggressive version, the fetal alcohol effect, has been traced to preconception alcohol intake with both parents. And I think, in all of this, the male is producing or giving half of the contributions to a new child. So males are just as important to be following all this kind of stuff as females are. Alcohol does significantly reduce conception rates. It's toxic to eggs and sperm, to the embryos and the fetus, and it leaches valuable nutrients. And then we're trying to boost your nutrients up to superhuman levels. So really, alcohol is one thing that you can control and is best to get rid of if you can. Caffeine in all its forms, again, should be avoided. Maybe a little bit of low caffeine tea, but really try cutting that out. It stresses the adrenal glands, which isn't so good. It just basically adds more stress, and it can affect your hormone levels, increase the risk of miscarriage, and impact on baby's health. And just remember too that there's caffeine in chocolate, there's caffeine in a lot of fizzy drinks and soft drinks as well. Marijuana, cocaine, heroin affects reproductive function for men and women, and really not ideal starts for a little one either, or for your egg and sperm health. Nicotine or smoking halves the chance of pregnancy per month with natural conception and IVF. Both partners should stop smoking, ideally at least 4 months before they're trying to conceive. The effects of cigarettes and social drugs aren't just restricted to the damage they may have on the ability to conceive, but also constitutes a grave threat to a baby's health and even to a pregnancy. Nicotine is is a vasoconstrictor, so it tightens things up. Okay, so it can stop oxygen getting through to an unborn child. So smokers are twice as likely to miscarry. Babies tend to be less healthy at birth, more likely to suffer congenital issues. There's an increased link, particularly from fathers who smoke, to asthma and childhood cancer, particularly leukemia as well. With men also, there's an increased chance of impotence, low sperm count, high levels of immotile and malformed sperm, as well as a greater risk of atrophy of the testes. And surely atrophy of the testes is enough to put men off the thought of smoking. And women, it can increase the chance of irregular cycles, early menopause, and just a whole heap of just general health issues. So again, really work hard, get some support if you need it, to try and knock smoking on the head. Prescription meds, again, this is something that you really need support with. You need to discuss with your GP what you're taking, maybe talk with your herbalist or naturopath about what alternatives there might be, and then try and work together with both modalities to work out maybe some other options or some less toxic options, which may, don't have an effect on fertility or reproductive outcomes. So that again, this is something I don't want anyone stopping their prescription meds just because they think it might affect their fertility. You really need to check in and get support on that one. Okay, next slide. And I think this is coming any minute now. So this is really knowing when to seek help. because there is a lot of help, there is a lot of support out there, and sometimes it's just knowing how to tap into it, where to find things. And again, this is where Fertility New Zealand comes in handy, because we have an extensive network of people we can reach out to and help guide you as to where might be the best place for you to start. But with men, if you've had previous genital surgery, particularly for undescended testes or something like that, or if you've had an inguinal hernia repair or any previous infections like chlamydia or mumps, that kind of thing, so that there may be issues. And I think with men, it's always, if you're thinking about trying to conceive early on, get a semen analysis done, even get 2 semen analyses done, so then if there are any issues early on, rather than 6, 12, 24 months later. In women, a regular cycle. So if you have very long cycles or very short cycles, or if your periods are less, sort of happening less than 10 days after ovulation, that's the kind of thing that would be pointing towards some sort of hormonal imbalance. And, that's when you probably really want to be reaching out and having a chat to your herbalist, your naturopath, even your GP at that point. If you get severe pain with menstruation or intermittent pain through the cycle, or even pain with intercourse, then you probably want to be seeking some help and advice. If you get breakthrough bleeding through your cycle, or if you get any unusual discharge, so instead of your mucus being clear or slightly yellow, it's really yellow or green, or it's really smelly and lumpy, or a bit like cottage cheese, then it's probably worth going and getting a swab done to see if there's anything growing there. If you've had any sexually transmitted infections like chlamydia, or if there's early menopause in the family. So if anyone in your family, like your mom or your grandmother, went through menopause before 50, it really is probably worth investigating that and just having yourself checked out, in case that's something that you might be looking at as well. Also for couples, if you've been trying to conceive for longer than 12 months, definitely seek help. If you're over 35 and a woman, and you've been trying for 9 months, or if you're over 40, you've been trying for 6 months, definitely, seek help. As you get older, you reduce the time, really, before you don't want to be leaving it for longer and longer periods of time, and then your options start to run out. So that's a very brief overview. And I guess if you've got some questions and stuff, just pop them up and I'll answer them. But really, for yourselves, the things you can do is really just focus on having a healthy mind and a healthy body. That's for everybody, anyone wanting to be becoming parents. And believe me, it will help you once you become a parent as well. But definitely having a plan, having some options, like even if that is, let's do our preconception care. But we know we may be having some problems, so let's book in with the fertility clinic, or let's get some help from a herbalist or naturopath that specializes in fertility to help us through this, and help, there might be supplements and herbs and that kind of thing you need, just to help, support you through this time. So there we go, very briefly. And I'll just see, Juanita, if there's any questions anyone has at all. Oh, there they are. Sorry, I couldn't see the questions. They were hiding on my screen. Yeah, got it. So we've got a question here. My husband has good quality sperm, but low movement and low count. At times, he cycles to work 25 minutes each way, not every day. Would this type of cycling have an impact? Probably not so much, depending on if his quality's good. I think if it's not every day, and it's only, it's not like he's spending hours and hours on the bike seat, it's probably okay, but it's hard to know. We because the benefit of cycling to work as well, is also got to be weighed in there. I think probably it's more if you're spending hours on the bike seat is more of an issue, and it's particularly road bikes because of the positioning. So if he's more upright, and even if he's standing and cycling a little bit, it should be okay. But if he's worried, maybe you could try where he doesn't bike for a couple of months, and see if that does make an impact on the count and the motility. That seems to be all there at the moment. No. In terms of tracking ovulation, would you suggest the urine tests to help? For some people, the urine tests are really, really helpful, and other people find it that doesn't necessarily give them much clarity. So if they work for you, and if they link up with what your mucus is telling you, and even your blood tests and things like that, then yes. But if they seem to be creating more confusion than clarity, then I would probably avoid using them. Seems to be all. Has anyone else got other questions?
If anyone watching this recording down the track has any questions, you are very welcome to contact our support desk, and we can forward them on to Jo or help you with any other information that you might require. Thanks, Jo. That was really useful, and I always find that radiation stuff a little bit scary, but certainly be social distancing myself from my phone a little bit more.
There you go.
Thank you all for watching and for joining in. And this webinar is being recorded and will be available on the Fertility New Zealand website if you wish to forward it to anyone else or watch it again at a later date. So thanks again for joining us, and good evening.
Thank you.